It's kind of crazy. I mean, it's good. It's like starting off slow. I think Northeast Harbor starts usually slow. It is definitely. Yeah, definitely. It's not. I don't think that. I know that it's evolved. So it's kind of like everything that happens in the world sort of doesn't quite as much impact. Milk and honey is also a luxury. True. Yeah. So no, it's good.
Yeah, no, like it's parents.
Yes. I'm hearing all kinds of doom and gloom, and I was like,
and there was some
yeah.
But then it's so
He's like, okay, I got
yes.
Yeah.
We all have jobs. Like we can have jobs because it's like
Yeah.
we signed up for, and we decided that we would do public education, electric transportation pieces.
I've been wearing
I left two mics, I'm not sure.
I realized afterwards.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, thank you.
Set it in front of my 1996.
Yes.
One more.
You were all wow. Just nice.
Lily said she was on.
Do we know? Is Alex?
Lily's gone. Yeah, but Tracy's not.
Abandoned us.
What about
Mike? Really, I don't know. I have Mike is not coming. Mike is not coming. What about, did Misha?
I didn't see anything.
I can't remember.
Primates.
Yeah, I know. That's right. Yes.
Wait.
Yeah.
Thanks for sending her our way.
Whoa, there was a reboot with Felix the Cat. In which we need one more person.
Felix the cat.
Wait till see that was all. It's like.
Is that the?
Yeah.
Unusual meetings like this.
It's very like.
I suspect that. Well,
You know that and.
Well, it is.
More than you did say they were. Yeah. Yeah. Where they are. What? That's like it's 2 years.
And
it's like embarrassing. I have my once a year every other year.
It's
pretty rare. I don't get like. No, it's not.
It's pretty easy to see.
So she her cold call is 6 times. What's that? I'm fixing John.
What your dopamine hits.
Yeah.
So it's gonna catch you.
She's not. Yeah, that's a good way.
She said she thinks it's.
Tell her they're asking.
Yeah, they do have a bar sometimes.
Then I sent her. At first I was like, oh, I can't send her a photo. And I was like, oh, that's public information.
Yeah.
So then I texted her. And she was like,
Okay.
push transfer, I was like,
Just so.
We can Zoom it.
Sure.
Or I could ask. We can Zoom in.
Do you have someone we can zoom in?
Yes.
Perfect.
Susan says she can zoom in. Great. And she's texting the other people.
Is she behind the line?
Jody.
She's doing some panini.
Order up.
Some salmon croquettes or some flatbread.
She's not the doctor anymore. It's her not. Okay. Wait, look. Wait.
Oh, yeah, Andrew.
Okay, here we go.
We have an Andrew. We can have a meeting.
that's so
Thank God. Oh, wait.
She said she'll have it.
Yeah,
Does that
I'm not
happen
voting no.
before?
Oh, yeah.
She's not
I still appreciate the symphony.
You bring this up now. And we don't need Susan.
No, I think you do.
No, we do.
Actually,
We do.
Oh, we do.
We don't.
Yep.
You can't vote.
Oh.
There are
Yes,
four
we
of
need
us
to
here.
bring.
Then we need to.
Oh,
Never
not,
mind.
not enough. Sworn in.
On board.
Nice.
And I'll get here, so it makes me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's the opposite. Yeah. I saw that today. His parents, his brother,
Okay, we do need to.
sister-in-law,
Vote her,
and kids.
so we're all set.
Oh,
Okay.
stressful.
For these cats,
Yeah.
You're getting a link from the. Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, this is the first day of summer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's one other thing.
I'm just gonna give Susan 1 second to get on. Starts.
When she gets there, I'll call her.
Yes, right, yeah. So we know, confirm.
We confirm that she is.
Yeah. But I'm like, do you guys
Because you're not voting, you're not-
do you know? But why are you sending this scam to me?
Kind of.
But it doesn't matter to me because it's not.
Really? Oh,
Yeah,
so.
I feel kind of out of the loop.
It's like
I feel like I feel kind of out of the loop. You never.
Susan Doe. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, that's out of town.
Yeah.
She would invite, so she should do
Yeah, I do a lot. Which one? Oh,
Steakhouse.
Man, I remember when I first set up my first network printer, it took me like 4 days to get it like set up on a network wirelessly. I was so proud of myself, and then like 3 days later, it dumped itself. You know, got an DNS. Oh,
It was bad. No, it's
it was hard. And now it's like, I'm just gonna print over
yeah.
It's like, you know, we had to have the number off the printer. You had to type
Oh,
it in,
yeah, yeah,
you know, like,
yeah,
right
yeah,
there.
yeah.
It was all wired network, and then I had like a wireless thing I plugged into my laptop. It was important. I didn't use it all. It was just like, because I wanted to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, I'm trying at home. I can't get my laptop. My phone will be on it.
I can't print anything.
Did you send the link?
Yeah, she said I'm refreshing like mad, it hasn't come through. So I sent it. Not right now.
It usually takes like a minute or two to go through. I can see it again.
Send it to her.
Oh, she got it.
Okay, she
She
got
got
it.
it. What?
We're all texting her.
Yeah.
It's like, he was.
I'm sure that's really helpful.
Yeah, I'm just trying to do like all these things at once.
Yeah.
Did you get it? Did you get it? Did you get it? Did you get it? Did you get it?
Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order at 4:12, now that our guest of honor has joined us.
Hi, Susan.
Okay, confirmation of board member attendance and voting. I believe the sheet has gone around, and since Susan is by Zoom, we will call on her when it comes to voting. Is there any public comment? Has any public comment come? Okay. Approval of minutes of 12 May 2025. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Susan, did you, are you in favor? Okay. Reports and updates. We'll go start with the superintendent report.
Happy end of the school year, everybody. I'm glad to see everybody who was able to make it, and thank you for your flexibility for allowing us to move our meeting back so we can have our chair back. So welcome back, Jessica. Our district service promises in interrupting educational inequities and creating schools in which every child and staff member thrives one conversation at a time. Our enrollment for June, we ended the year at 1,350 students. In May, we are at 1,352. You will see the addition of our total HCTC count that's going there. I thought that would be important to share with you. So that was our current student count at the end of the year. If you remember it, when I introduced this at our last meeting, I had put in what the count will be for next year. So that was about 57 or 58 students. Staffing update. It's a moving target, and things are changing all the time. We have positions open as long-term subs because of staff being out for pregnancy. We have an open music position as one of our music teachers, Jacob, is moving down south to be closer to family, and a position there. We have our speech and language positions that are open across the district, and behavior interventionists at Pematic, some ed tech positions and others. So I keep looking at our sheet, and it's constantly changing. In terms of the central office positions, we're trying to set up some interviews for a special education administrator. I worked with my office to finalize the human resources coordinator job description and what that would look like, and I hope to get an ad completed this week to be able to sort of get out for that position. The occupational therapist position has been out and about for quite a while, and we haven't received anything yet for that position. So, but we keep refreshing and continuing to look for avenues to find to fill our positions. In terms of school highlights, we had our graduation here at the high school. It was wonderful. The state track meet was held here at the high school because it was rained out. It's supposed to be down in Freeport, and it rained here that day too, but we were able to pull that off. And during the spring carnival, Mr. Braun, Mr. Haney, and myself participated in the Pie in the Face fundraiser for one of our staff who's going through some cancer treatments, and it was something the students had asked for, and so we got to sit there. Mr. Braun and Mr. Haney got hit more than I did. Maybe they didn't know who I was, or some of them who did, but that was a lovely time. Over at the Ashley Bryan School, they had students from Narraguagus High School come to visit to learn about island life. The next 2 years, the school is moving over to Longfellow, and so that's taking place and getting that school ready. And registration is open, and notices went out. Families of Mount Desert who, if they choose and they want to register their kids to try island school experience, we haven't had anybody join in the last couple of years, but we've highlighted it again. I told them I'd highlight it in our, at this meeting. Frenchboro has their town meeting coming up on Wednesday. At the Connors Emerson School, Heather and Michael, the administrator, sent out a How Did This Year Go survey to their community and parents, so an interesting way of gathering information about the climate of the year. Fifth graders observed fish migration over at the Soamesville fishway that goes through town and under the bridge. And eighth graders completed their unit on physics of skateboarding. And so they actually built skateboards as well. That was sort of part of that project. Over at Trenton, and this happens at some of our other elementary schools, Connors Emerson as well, is there's the senior march where high school students come back to their schools in their robes and their hats, and they walk through the schools. At Trenton, they had MDI High and EHS graduates come back. The second graders, as part of their concert, actually created etiquette for the concert goers about phones and read that out loud to the family members there to make sure that they were listening to the music and not on their phones. And they completed their Ames Web assessments and gathered all of their data to be ready for starting the school year with any kids that have Tier 3 needs in MTSS. So, finishing the year, but also prepping for next year. Over at Pematic, the middle school students participated. Last year, they did a survey on the clam flats, and as part of a recognition of that, they found that the clams aren't doing so hot, and so they're going to participate in some seeding and restoration of the flats on Connor Cove. The 8th grade went to Boston and Salem, and that was a great success. And the PTO has done a really good job there and working at raising funds. They raised over $5,000 this year in support of staffs and students. So thank you, parents and community, for participating in the fundraisers that then support the school. Swans Island, those 8th graders went to Washington, D.C. And had a wonderful time. The 5th graders were off and did the outdoor skills day at Camp Beechcliff, learning how to build fires and orient themselves. And a lot of the Swan students did particularly well in track this year in the overall team. They had a lot of kids who were quite skilled for spring track and did very well. At Mount Desert, they also did a school climate survey that was reported out for both community and teachers and students. And in their newsletter, you could sort of see how people were feeling. So a nice way to sort of wrap up the year to get a sense of how things are going. First and second graders wrapped up Geology Week, and they designed and erupted their volcanoes and did some tweaking based on what they experienced and their understandings of geology. And the Go-To Science team, Beth and Curtis, visited the school with a full-size T-Rex skull. And Beth and Curtis is part of the Go-To Science, and some of our teachers use those there. Beth is actually a College of the Atlantic student, and teachers have an option to sort of bring them into the classroom, and they do, they come into the classroom in a video sense, and students test a hypothesis, and then they go around and test that in different parts of the world and interact with the kids, and it's a pretty neat program. Over in Tremont, the band played at the Memorial Day Parade in Southwest Harbor. 7th and 8th graders presented their work on the salt marsh restoration at UMO, and they were actually highlighted on the DOA website, and that link can take you there. And some second graders participated in the Acadia Birding Festival at Babson Creek when they were here. In terms of budgets, the last two budgets since we were here were both Bar Harbor and Tremont, and those budgets have passed. So our final budget that we have is the Frenchboro budget, and that will be at 4 o'clock out on Frenchboro. And Nancy and I and Scott are heading on out and heading back. And the weather is a little rainy, but the winds look okay, so we might get just a little wet. But that might be from above, not from the ocean. And as I had mentioned, you know, on average of all of our schools, our budget to budget increase this year was 9%, and appropriations was 8% when you look at all of our schools. I did sort of a year in review for an update and sort of highlighting sort of where we started with the year. And actually, when we started with Danielle at the beginning of this year, the highlight was charting educational success, setting a vision of the graduate as a destination, and navigating the first 6 weeks of school, trying to tie together the work we've done over the last couple of years. And the things that we have worked on district-wide have been support for our multi-tiered system of support and continuing working with the Great Schools Partnership, not only in setting the broader vision, but also Danielle working with our curriculum directors with individual schools to help them meet their needs. And one of the things that they worked closely on was looking at, you know, how are we storing and where are we storing our data so that it's accessible for teachers and MTSS coordinators, and that's what Branching Minds is, and that's something that we'll be getting off the ground next year. We worked on responsive classroom and had that offered district-wide, as well as understanding child development and focus at our early adolescence. We worked on our understanding of AI and its instructional uses throughout the district and within our classrooms. We brought Trevor Regan here with a focus on growth mindset and instruction. So again, focusing on sort of how we utilize growth mindset and see that within our individual classrooms and lessons. Working with the early childhood PLO on the early childhood educational vision. We had the middle school piloting the EL curriculum across the district. The reorganization and planning committee has made great progress and will be submitting their plan and doing community meetings starting next week on Monday. And our budgets that passed across all of our schools, so that was a good feeling, and by some pretty good margins in all of our communities. The district as a whole supported human resource support and planning and support for our CDS transition. The child development services needs for those 3 and 4-year-olds who have special education plans, and that responsibility will be on us as of 2028. Our common studies have evolved after their first round of 3 years and are moving into a new 3-year session, and so there's been a lot of growth in terms of that, and then how we'll be working with those groups, and then what sort of driving us and moving forward is wrapping up with the vision of a graduate. So we've done a lot this year. Our administrators and teachers have worked really hard in focusing on MTSS, Tier 1 instruction, and then focusing on our response to children's behavior and how to make that climate better. And then we're continuing that going into next year. And we've sort of talked about having Amanda Wilson here who's going to work very closely with all of our schools in supporting our classroom teachers in looking at child behavior so that our classroom environments are wonderful places to learn. So it's something that teachers have continued to ask for from the district level. It's great that we'll be able to provide that support to all of our schools. Staff spotlight. I did 2 people individually. Kristen Braun, particularly at Mount Desert. She is a PhD candidate at UMO, and she got some really wonderful feedback from her professor, and which is sort of focusing on fine motor and graphomotor development and reading proficiency. So that's basically your fine motor development. And we actually heard from, after Kristen did her paper and work, we met as an A team with our occupational therapists, and they were talking about data they were seeing and information they were receiving from teachers in that fine motor and that relation to fine motor and reading proficiency, and actually met and sort of talked about whether or not the program that we've been using, Foundations, is really meeting the phonics side, but is it meeting the fine motor side, and how there is this really interesting connection. So we'll be exploring that a little bit more and more in terms of the programs that we're using to support that aspect of teaching and learning within our schools. And then Tanya Prentice, who has done wonderful work, part of the seagrass seeding that's happening over in Tremont. She was actually identified by the National Association of Biology Teachers as the 2025 Outstanding Biology Teacher Award. So good on Tanya for her work. And then I wanted to spend a little time and just give a shout out to those folks who are continuing the process of teaching and learning within our schools as we prepare kids for next year. I actually noticed driving by Trenton that they have the number of days till school on their board. Often you see it the other way around, so I was like, well, that's a real great positive way of looking at it. And as of this morning, it's 72 days. So for the MDI Advantage, today was the first day, and Ruth Poland, Miranda Snyder, Becky Lehman, Brooke Garapi, Mark Kerrigan, Michelle Gertler, Ian Braun, Justin Harding, and Kelly Sanborn are all the staff that were receiving our incoming freshmen, and today was their first day. What a lovely day to start. Our summer school staff is Crystal DeGrassa, Melanie Mace, Story Renault, Heather Cooper, Kristen Murphy, Valerie Sprague, Megan Baldridge, Tara Peterson, Chris McGuire, Heather Doherty, Renee Labor, Andrew Carlson, Sarah Hathaway, Tia Palmer, Megan Monzillo, Karen Ricketts, Stephanie Waite, Laurel Elk, Christina Crisp, Jasmine Delate, Amanda Daly, Jamie Bracey, Heather Kelly, Sophia Picard, Judy Venable, Maria Schritt, Sarah Lewis, Thomas Brennan, Danielle Barnett, Teresa Gray, Becky Ross, Crystal Springer, Clara Johnson, Ron Vale, and Karen Rickett. And that covers teachers, ed techs, nurse, cooks, bus drivers, and interpreters, who are all part of our full day AOS summer school program. So I thank them, and a shout out for them for applying and wanting to be a part of that program. So I wanted to make sure that we are acknowledging the work that they are doing. Reorganization update. We had met last week and set a meeting again to meet on July 30th to sort of debrief some of those first community meetings. And we have 4 community meetings that are set right now, and those are Trenton, which will be this Monday, Southwest Harbor on the 30th, Bar Harbor on July 14th, and Swans on the 16th. Those will be out in the paper, the Bar Harbor Story, and in other places. They'll be running around 6 to 8 o'clock. And the basic organization of what those will look like is, rather than just being me or RPC members presenting to a crowd, we want it to be a little bit more of a conversation. So it'll be set up, folks will be in circles of 10 with RPC members in each of those circles, and we will be doing presentations about 3 aspects of the reorganization. One of those will be looking at how we organize our schools. That'll be one session, and then I'll do a presentation that talks about that to give people an idea, and then that'll allow each of those groups to give feedback to the members, and then we'll share that later as a thoughtful way of trying to gather questions and feedback on that. And then once that's done, then we'll move on to the economic side. I'll share some information with folks, and then they'll have conversation, and then we'll do the governance side and sort of the same thing, and gather that in those sites. And then we were going to meet as an RPC after those 4 in particular to sort of get a sense of where we are, and that's sort of the basic way of how those are going to run. So I'm looking forward to that.
Can you, I don't get it. There's gonna be three groups. You're gonna do one presentation, and there's gonna be 3 groups of people are gonna break off after you talk, and then we're gonna get back together and talk.
It's going to be set up when you walk into the space. There's going to be 10 circles, groups, and of 10 people each. So about 100. There might be like 120 when I get to Bar Harbor. So I'm going to expand the sizes a little bit. once everybody is in those groups of 10, then I'm gonna do 3 little mini presentations. There'll be just a basic introduction to everybody.
Okay.
Then there'll be I will do an introduction to the session that they're talking about. Then they'll be off. And then when we're done, I'll do the second part, and then everybody will talk, and then the third. But to try to break it up into more specific parts rather than just one large presentation, because oftentimes in those situations you might have one person that's raising their hand and dominating, and we want to be able to hear more voices rather than just the louder ones.
I have some questions and concerns about holding these meetings in the summer. I mean, I wouldn't try to not desert. I don't know about other towns, but you don't have people's attention, and they're all really, really preoccupied. We can't get them to come to, I mean, I'm on several town committees and boards. We can't get people to come to some of the meetings. You know, those of us who are on the planning board are planning board meetings, but other than that, people are like, I can't. And so I have real concerns about trying that in our town, and I don't know, I won't speak for other towns, but.
I know that one of the, I really wanted to be able to get started once the RPC had solidified around those 3 areas that we can sort of share and be able to get feedback. I don't think that we would be precluded depending on, if we don't get people, well then, you know, we're gonna have to take a look and hold more and shift that. But I think it's really important that we start to have those conversations. But I don't think depending on the numbers, if we don't get large numbers, we'll come back and do it again.
That concern had come up, and I think part of the feeling is like we're hearing so much feedback that people are so hungry for the forums to happen that it was like, okay, we have to start holding forums. Like if we have to push back the timeline and hold more forums like after the summer because we don't get enough people or we just feel like it's a good idea, then we'll do that. But also just responding to that sense of urgency about having forums now is kind of what led to this.
I feel like anybody in the general public having real information about it is gonna spread. Even if it's just.
I just think you gotta need people to vote on this, you need people to vote to approve it, and if they are not informed and they have not been given, I'm just gonna speak about my town, if they have not been given a good opportunity to really drill into it.
Right.
No, I definitely hear that.
I was going to ask, are these going to be in the paper or?
Yes. Yep.
Wait, do you know where they'll be held?
In the gym. They'll be in the school gyms.
In the
school
school
gyms. Yeah.
Thank you.
And will be on the
Perfect.
the flyer that went out.
So, since there isn't one for Mount Desert yet, will Mount Desert residents potentially come to these? And is that an issue?
Yes, anybody can come to the minutes, I think, part of the flyers, you know, public are welcome, but
There will be one from out.
there will be one from Mount Desert. But if folks from Mount Desert see it listed, whether it's on the Bar Harbor Story or in the paper, and they want to come, they can. It's not exclusive.
I saw there was a first of what I assumed to be a number of letters to the editor. That was one was in the Bar Harbor Story and the McIver. Is that like something that's going to continue on?
Yes.
Okay. So like multiple ones, sort of like setting up these. Okay.
We have as a group, we have identified we have a sort of a splinter messaging group and sort of talking through, you know, avenues next. So we have people that will be writing letters to the editor around the organization.
I'm sorry if you already I've said this. Are each of these meetings kind of like the presentations are basically the same?
Yep.
Okay, great. That's
But
not
they
like
might evolve also, like depending on, and also what happened to the previous ones and, you know, responding.
And then the following ones in Mount Desert and Fremont will also be kind of the same.
Yep.
Okay, great.
Oh, no.
What's the mechanism that you've identified for like reporting out? You said you're going to give the presentation and groups of 10 people are going to chit chat. You're going to record some of the poignant things they say. What is the mechanism reporting that back out? Because probably like maybe only a smaller number of people may come, but the majority of people want to know the answers, sort of thing. So what are you thinking about that?
I haven't come up with the best way to do that yet. And I think that'll come through some more conversations with people have ideas, and then with the messaging committee, particularly after we have the first one in Trenton, that might give us some ideas of, how can we share what we've learned and be able to put that out in a way. And so we have a Facebook page, but that depends on how many people go and find it and actually like on it before they might see, that type of feed. We'll definitely put what we've learned. They'll go up on the website, so there'll be that. Probably utilize the Islander Bar Harbor story, and potentially Chris Popper as a way of getting information out there.
Do you recall, like, when we did the forums for the school, the ones that had an online joining option were super well attended. Sometimes most of the questions came from the folks who were online. I know I like that you're trying to, provide opportunities for smaller group discussion and in the dividing up of the folks, et cetera, et cetera. I just wonder if you should try to have an online option for folks. Turn off or moderate comments however way you want, or
Right, and they might not be able to participate in the discussion, but at least they can see them.
Just like, poor Susan's like behind the line right now, like she, whatever, and she like managed to get on but there may be folks like that can't drive up to the school or whatever that they might want to drop in. And I know it's more challenging when but especially for the first ones.
Was
You know
that
what I
for
mean?
the Bar Harbor fund?
So when we did, for the school discuss, like one of I think at least two of the big presentations that we had, like the first community forums, we had smaller ones were, we were in small groups at tables, but we had them an online joining option. And so someone was moderating that, and people could ask questions, and they could be answered in real time. And it was very helpful.
Yeah. I think that's a great idea.
And you could ask board members from the particular times to help moderate and monitor the chat and moderate things like that. I know it's a lot for the person to be presenting and also doing that. So.
All good feedback. Thank you. And then the school board corner, just some things to pay attention to. Number one, a reminder, start from the bottom, is the new school board orientation will be July 1st. It'll be, depending on how many people show up, it'll either be here in the library or in the conference room, and that's open to anybody. And Eileen King from the Maine Superintendent's Association is going to come and sort of lead that. So hopefully we already sent out a note to all of our board members. I made sure that new board members got the MDIRSS handbook, and then they also got a copy of the sort of the Budget 101 after Eileen does her work, and then we'll focus a little bit on the budget so people know what to expect when we start the year off and they start looking at budget sheets and budget planning. There are sort of 4 bills that are important that I'm paying attention to. I'll start with the top, this one is law, as is the one below it already has already been signed by the governor, is some tweaks to the physical escort and restraint and seclusion in schools, and just some targeted changes in terms of when and how you'll be able to escort a child out of a school, out of a classroom, if they're distributing, if they're showing dangerous behaviors and exhibiting dangerous behaviors. So we'll see how that goes. And the legislature and the education committee heard quite a bit of experiences that schools are having with the very restrictive policies that have been in place. And that is now law. And I'm sure we'll get probably some training through Drummond Woodsum as the year starts on what that looks like and how that will look like in schools. There was a bill that was out there on unallocated fund balances, and there was a sunset. It has been 9%. It was going to go back to 5%, and there was a lot of lobbying to sort of make sure that we stayed at the 9%, particularly during times where budgets can be real challenging, and to ensure that schools have flexibility to meet the needs of the school, but also think about the taxpayers. And then the act regarding superintendent's agreement, there's a real push, and it seems like this will pass in terms of ensuring that the language of what that process might looks like to promote transparency, collaboration, and consistency across the state, and that there'll be a single form that superintendents will use, and maybe a little bit more guidance on that process. And then one that has had a lot of chatter statewide, doesn't affect us as much, is there's a question out there, probably pushed by the MEA, in looking at supporting teacher pay, and one of those was the allowing teachers to qualify for overtime, and that would happen, the threshold would be if a teacher is making less than $43,951. Nobody in our district meets that threshold, but there are other places, and I think that bill was set forward as a way of taking a look at teacher pay and equity across the state. So we'll see where that one is. I think vote will happen this week or next week. And so those are just some of the key bills that I'm hearing a lot about that sort of come across or have had to pay attention to. And that's my report.
Any questions for Mike that haven't already been addressed? Okay, that brings us to, reorganization update. Do you have more to say than you said? No.
That's
Okay. Directors of teaching and learning, vision of a graduate. I hear this is going to be a great update here.
You can get the color version online. It's a June note. So I did print some hard copies here because I realized not everybody had their computers, and I think it might be tough to read on the phone. But so pass those around. This is our almost last iteration. We are still in the draft stage of the Vision of the Graduate. We are now taking feedback from teachers, and we wanted to put in front of you the same protocol, appraise, polish, and ponder protocol. What works for you? What do you like? What are you wondering about, pondering about, and what do you think could use a little more polishing? And we've gotten a decent response. It's tough to get feedback at the end of the year, but I will tell you a lot of the anecdotal responses is very positive. So people feeling like it's good to go, but it's not good to go until we put it in front of everybody and said, what do you think? So we're still putting it in front of people and looking for feedback to make it better. We as a team do feel like it is representative of the data we collected. And I did, put up some numbers in the June note to clarify, who we're counting. And actually, I think I lowballed a little bit because we didn't take into account a lot of the data we collected 2 years ago, because we did bring that into the data pool too. So that's like another 100 voices. So, but this is I did note the data we collected this past year, and we did document that, and we hope to open school with a little video montage celebrating the work, and then presenting our final product at the opening of school. So at this point, we would like to open it for our discussion for praise, polish, and ponders, and collect your data as a school board and incorporate that into our feedback pool. So.
I think our graduates came out with all these qualities, like, if that's, hopefully that is happening, and amazing, right? Is there, how do you, and maybe you covered this already at a different time, how do you envision, I can see, if you're holding up your curriculum or whatever, how does that process look to see, how are we aligning our work that we're doing daily with students with
it's varying stages. So I would say the high school is further along than everybody else. You've probably heard Matt and Jill report out on the learning maps that they have been working pretty expressly on. And so with a very clear written curriculum, now you can go through an audit process and go, okay, where are we doing these things in the vision of a graduate? Where are we lacking? And then make plans from there. The middle school has done a pretty good job of getting very clear on its scope and sequence, and so I think we'd be pretty closely poised to be able to go through that process. I think we're gonna have a similar experience at the early elementary education piece. We're a little behind in maybe our 3, 4, 5 group, but we're trying to get them from both sides, right, and kind of squeeze them in, and then have a clear, expressed, written curriculum. That is really important before you can conduct such an audit, right? So for those groups that aren't quite there, we're going to be holding this up and saying, we need to get clear on this. So it means we need to get clear on this, and then audit, see what we're missing, and then have a strategic plan on how we're filling in the gaps. So that's what we've talked about in terms of our strategic plan and getting clear. And then next year we are going to be working with our coach and sort of putting in a very clear expressed cycle of review. We don't have one right now. We just sort of make it up as we go, and we want to say, no, every 3 years we look at this, or every 5 years, and just have it mapped out, and then have working groups that we pull together to help us evaluate whether it's meeting our needs or not, taking a look at our data, taking a look at our goals, and then making adjustments from there. So this helps make it very clear why we're doing what we're doing. It's not a punishment. We're not looking at stripping people of teacher autonomy, and that's often how it can be perceived. We're always trying to strike that balance between, making sure we have integrity with our curriculum and what our kids are getting, and then allowing for, places for creativity to flourish, for sure. So yeah. Thanks.
Other questions? Well, thank you for all your work on this. I think this just super important. I know, like, it can feel maybe to some students who are like attenuated, but I think it's so important to have a cohesive vision that we can make sure we're all like moving towards.
I will share, people have said anecdotally, I didn't think it was going to be a big deal, but now I'm kind of inspired by this. And teachers are going, oh my gosh, I could get stickers, and I can see how we can really live this and operationalize it, from an early age. Like, good job being a bridge builder today, and that type of language. So we do think a marketing campaign is part of this too. This is definitely the more verbose doc. We definitely want just the the short exchange as well, but we needed to sort of be really explicit about what we meant by these pieces first. So.
And I will say, I mean, it is very inspiring. I will say, as my oldest child is still very young, he's 8, and he's at that age where he will oftentimes kind of go, why do I need to go to school? What is the purpose? Especially with AI coming up, like, these kids are aware that there's conveniences, and to be able to speak to our values, but also have like this nice marriage of values of like, this is the bigger picture. It's not just about the granular content necessarily that you're learning, but it's about becoming this like
the computer could do math or whatever.
Yeah, right. But also just like, this is this is what you're learning by going in and having that routine and working with others. Like, these are the skills you're really taking away, regardless of what specialty you're going to focus on in college, or so it is nice to even just have that conversation in the schools as well as what we're doing at home. So thank you.
Gail and
I sort of zeroed right in on truth seekers, and it almost strikes me, and I know this is done in some countries, I think of Finland and places like that, there's actual curriculum. It's not just something we say, well, how did we do that this semester? There's actual content built around that, which I suspect is highly needed throughout the entire population, not just kids in school. So do you have intentions of building that sort of substance into the implementation of this process?
Well, yes, I don't know what curriculum you're referring to, so I'd be curious to know more about that particular.
Well, I don't have the specific
piece.
curriculum, but certainly there have been news articles about Finland and how in their classrooms they actually teach how to understand facts versus fiction, and how to they actually explicitly teach that.
We do have actually quite a history of. It's not that new to us. We're pretty, I don't know, those of you, you've been around, remember our report out on the fallacy detectives work that we did maybe, I don't know, maybe
My
12 years
kids
ago.
did.
Do you remember that? Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have woven that into our work, but in terms of like outside external curriculums that support that work, I'd be curious to learn more. But I will say I do see a lot of that particular like investigations of bias and understanding the brain. I mean, that is built into our Mind Up curriculum. So we do have that in our systematic curriculums already.
I know my kids have like, or my younger kids, like
Yeah.
learning to evaluate sources, like
Yeah.
learning to read newspapers. Is
Yes.
this reliable? Is it
Yeah.
like been?
Or even cite sources, like
Right.
what
Yeah.
sources are.
Finland
Yeah.
toolbox.
There you go. Send me the link.
Media literacy, media literacy and education.
Well,
in Finland.
And that I will share is part of our real concerted focus with our, I've reported out a little bit on our district AI working team, but now we're talking about bringing in, it's gonna be human, I can't get it all straight for you, I'm not prepared for that presentation just yet. But it really is about evaluating, is it true, do I need to use this tool, like when, is it ethical, like having some kind of gradations of use and application that we're going to be working together on next year, and that will incorporate that type of responsibility. So yeah, it's in the works in different spaces. Yeah.
Eliza?
I mean, I feel like I just have a general comment that piggybacks on what Maria was saying, just that I think it's like a nice, I also have kids who are at an age where they're questioning school and pushing back about rules and school and why. And I think this is just like a great document about like the culture of education, ideally. And that's gonna be my tack to be like, just, I don't really, do your best, but it's about like the culture of this stuff. That's why you're doing it. That's why. Yeah, I appreciate that.
I think one of the exciting things when we address this with the 18 can share afterwards is how they were thinking right away of how you could connect, even with the youngest learners, that you could connect those attributes to them and do things in the classroom that represent that. And that goes to your point, Eliza, sort of making it real to them. And so we had, from the main learning results, a clear and effective communicator, and then we had and that was probably harder for our youngest kids to connect to, but you could sort of, in the conversations that we had, talking about how you could have kids see themselves as bridge builders or pathfinders and things like that. So that was a really great conversation.
And I will say, I think one thing that's pretty nuanced but really powerful, and it came up in, I don't know, one of our new iterations of feedback that we were soliciting, was to just change the pronouns, right? Like it's we, it's us, this is our community. And in any other document that we've seen, it's been just the vision of graduate, or
The graduate will.
right. And it's just, I thought that was a real powerful shift that I think speaks to our community.
I want to say one more thing, and this does touch on what you were saying, but especially in this time when potentially the economy and like the job market and whatever are changing, this helps ground people and like, we have like whatever the job market is doing, or whatever kind of jobs aren't lucrative or do or don't exist, or whatever is going on, we're still helping create communities where people have these things, and that's something that is like that's of lasting importance regardless of what is a good job or not.
So one of the last things that we will bring forward in August is, wanting to have, this is as our vision, and then take a look at our, right now we have a mission and vision statement, so taking a look at our mission statement and bringing that forward to the board here as we align our documents so that we do have that sort of seamless sense of who we are as a district overall, as we prepare our kids for whatever future that they choose, and utilizing this tool as a way of, we make sure you have these skills. All right.
Any other questions? Agenda. We have one discussion item, first reading of policy DKC, expense authorization and reimbursement. believe this is just a,
And this came out of our special education review. There are two other fiscal notes. This was the easiest one to pull forward. I still have to do some work on the two others that you'll see. This basically states that we recognize that there should be a process for reimbursement and approval, and we have those processes, and they're in our procedures handbook, and those are expressed to folks. But as part of that review, we needed to have an explicit policy that says we do the things that we're doing. So this is one of those.
are there any questions about this policy before we, and of course it'll come back next month for our next meeting for second reading and final adoption. Any questions? Well, if you think of any questions, you can email, and just a reminder, board members are always welcome at the policy committee, and it would be great to get more people at policy committee meetings. So, and those are always the fourth Thursday? Fourth Thursday.
Fourth Thursday.
Yeah.
Do you have one this month?
Do we have one this month?
We set the one for this month. It'll be the 26th.
Well, that will, we'll send, Selena, you'll send an email one way or the other, like if it's not happening there, we email, if it is happening. Okay.
It's on the calendar right
It's
now.
on the calendar.
Yeah. The general assumption is it's happening unless you get an email from Selena that says it's not happening for some, because there's some reason. Okay, we have one action item, authorization for superintendent to hire during summer months. As everyone will remember, or if they're new to the board, this is just a standard item that allows Mike to, not to hire people and then it's subsequently approved by the board.
That allows me to provide a contract to someone, especially during the summer months when things can be very fluid, and the sooner we can have them sign a contract, and then they'll come back around to at the next board meeting. And folks have that 3-day option. You'll get the information, and then you'll have 3 days to be able to ask questions or request a board meeting if needed.
I'll move authorization.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Susan? I think you have to say it out loud.
Oh, yes, in
Yeah.
favor. Aye.
Aye. Perfect. Okay, any other business? Any public comment? Okay, the next meeting will be Monday, 11 August 2025, with a reminder that there's new school board member orientation on Tuesday, 1st of July 2025 at 5 p.m. in the superintendent's office. So that brings us to executive session pursuant to 1 MRSA 4056A personnel evaluation. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Very good, thanks Susan. Okay, we'll just give one moment to let the principals and so forth. Let's go.